recently you've been backing Theresa May's deal
Yes.
for Brexit. But we can talk about some issues that Brexit's going to have on the region,
Yes.
especially in terms of the economy.
Yeah.
What are the sort of issues that you can see that might come to a front with Brexit?
So let's be really clear about the first thing here. The West Midlands voted overwhelmingly for Brexit, more than any other region. So I believe that the Prime Minister is right to push for a deal that honours the referendum result. And the talk of a second referendum, the talk of extending Article 50, I don't believe is right. We've actually got to face into this, use the deadline to really concentrate. So I do believe that it is right we're at this stage in it now. Now, in terms of the issues for the West Midlands, now clearly there are some that are the same nationwide and they must be addressed by central government. But there are some really specific things which are very, very pronounced here. This region, as we know, is the manufacturing capital of the UK. Fantastic manufacturing businesses here, obviously led by Jaguar Land Rover. It's also the exporting capital of the UK. We have done brilliantly in growing our exports over the last few years. And there is no question that if there was to be a no deal Brexit, and just to really spell this out, what that meant that our manufacturers would have to pay a tariff to send their goods to Europe and indeed to come the other way. And in the manufacturing supply chains, product can probably move across the channel 5 times before we've got the final goods. So not even worrying about the delays that could be at ports, and there's a lot talked about that at the moment, but just the tariff cost would be really damaging to our manufacturers. So I am absolutely clear that we have to find a way in which those manufacturers can continue to trade with Europe in the broadly similarly to how they have done. Now that doesn't mean they haven't got to look for product opportunities around the world. Of course they're doing that. We've got great trade stats with China and with the USA. But the way in which our manufacturers work, they do rely on that really close integration with Europe. So that's probably the most specific thing about this region that sets us apart from elsewhere.
JLR touched on imports 40% of its components for the car building. How do we navigate the Brexit deal to make sure that people like companies like JLR can still build cars and not have to, because they announced that potentially up to 5,000 job cuts. So how do we navigate it so that JLR can save jobs, can protect that industry, and keep trading as they are?
So that's really what I've just been talking about. But just if I may, to correct your question, they did not announce potentially 5,000 job cuts. There was a rumour before Christmas. JLR didn't actually say anything about that rumour at all.
But they have slowed down production in
There is no question. They've already made, they've already had a reduction in manning. That's fact. And there is also no question that their sales are lower than they expected them to be. So of course there are challenges there. That's absolutely right. I just wanted to be clear, for the sake of accuracy, they did not say that before Christmas. But the issue facing them is exactly why I believe that we do have to have a deal to allow them to continue to operate their plants pretty much as they've operated them at the moment. This just-in-time manufacturer means there's no sort of there aren't warehouses full of their parts sitting next to the production line in Solihull and Castle Bromwich. They're bringing it in literally just in time at no cost in terms of tariff. And we have to have a deal that enables them, and indeed the aerospace manufacturers like UTC, like Moog in Wolverhampton, like Meggitt in Coventry, Rolls-Royce, of course, BMW at Hams Hall. It's all of these manufacturers that face the same really sophisticated supply chains that we've got to defend. Because it might sound a bit dry economics, but that's about jobs for people in this region, and that's why it's so important to fight for.
Absolutely. And I mean, if May's deal doesn't get through, what do you think the best route of option? What would you do in number 10?
What would I do in number 10? Well, the first thing, of course, is we hope that the Prime Minister's deal does get through for the reason that I've said. But if it doesn't, I think a very interesting thing is happening. There was a letter from 211, I think, MPs to the Prime Minister, led by 2 of our MPs, Caroline Spelman for Meriden and Jack Dromey for Erdington, cross-party obviously therefore, to say that whatever happens, we have to prevent a no deal. So, and I agree with that entirely. If I'd been an MP, I would have signed that letter. And what I then think could happen on Wednesday, if the Prime Minister is defeated on Tuesday, that then we will start to think about how are we going to find that parliamentary majority cross-party. And remember, if you think of Europe, both big parties have been split over Europe for decades. So it is hardly surprising that we've got to find a cross-party alliance. And that's what I'd be looking for, because I genuinely believe that there is a majority in Parliament for some form of deal. And you might say it'd be broadly based on what the Prime Minister's negotiated, but some deal that enables us, for our manufacturers particularly, to continue to trade.
Do you think if there's no option of a deal or potential working out of a deal, do you think remaining in the EU is an option? Do you think a second referendum, do you think that would be something that would be preferable to a no deal Brexit?
I do not believe there should be a second referendum. I find it hard to say that because I did vote Remain myself, and clearly I would have wished that to be the outcome. But I think there's a really important democratic principle here. We've had a referendum. You can't get anything higher in the sort of what's the word, the sources of authority. You know, we have asked the people who are sovereign what they want to happen, and they gave a clear answer. Some people might not like it, but they gave a clear answer. Voters in the West Midlands certainly gave a clear answer. I do not believe it is right to go back and ask the same question again. I think it is the responsibility of government to implement the will of the people.